Loss is an ocean that drowns a soul slowly, wave after wave. And for Gökberk demirci, when the news came that both his mother and his brother had passed away, it was as if the entire world stopped spinning. The silence afterward was the kind that rang in his ears, pressing against his chest, leaving him unable to breathe properly. He had always spoken of family as the pillar of his existence, the compass that kept him steady even in the chaos of fame and the demands of his career. To suddenly lose both his mother and his brother was like losing the roots of a tree. It left him standing but hollow, stripped of the foundation that had given him meaning. In the first hours, he could not process it. His mind, trained to slip into roles, trained to carry emotions for the screen, simply refused to accept reality. He kept replaying their voices in his head, his mother's gentle encouragement, his brother's laughter. He remembered small, ordinary moments, like sharing tea in the kitchen or hearing footsteps in the hallway of his childhood home. Now, those sounds were gone, and the absence was unbearable. He sat in his room staring at the walls, unable to speak, unable to weep at first, because the pain was too sharp, too immense to escape in tears. But grief eventually found its release. When the numbness broke, the tears came like a flood. He cried for the mother who had believed in him when no one else did, the woman whose prayers had carried him through his earliest struggles. He cried for the brother who had been his friend, his mirror, someone who shared the same blood and memories. Their faces appeared before him in every reflection, in every silence, and the knowledge that he could never hold him again crushed him with a weight no success, no fame, no applause could ever lift. As days passed, he wrestled with anger as much as sorrow. Anger at fate, anger at the fragility of life, anger at himself for not being able to stop it, even though he knew in truth there was nothing he could have done. He replayed every conversation, wondering if he had said enough, if he had shown enough love, if he had made them proud. This torment of questioning himself became part of the grieving cycle, an endless loop of guilt and longing that gnawed at his heart. When people came to console him, when fans sent word of comfort, he was grateful but distant. The kindness touched him, but it could not reach the depth of his loss. Their sympathy was like a gentle breeze against a storm. He appreciated their care, but grief is always lived alone. And in those loneliest nights, Gökberk discovered sides of himself he had never known. He discovered the human fragility that no public image could conceal, the vulnerability that even the strongest men must one day face. He understood how thin the thread between life and death really is, and how sacred every shared moment becomes when you realize it can be the last. Yet, despite the devastation, he also began to find within himself a quiet resilience. His mother had always taught him that love continues beyond life, that death is not an end but a transformation. In remembering her words, he found comfort in imagining that she and his brother were still with him in some invisible way, watching over him. He clung to that thought in order to stand again, because he knew they would not want him to sink forever into despair. They had been proud of his strength, and to honor them, he needed to carry that strength forward. Returning to his work was not easy. Every role, every camera, every line felt shallow compared to the vast emptiness he carried inside. But slowly, he began to use his grief as fuel, channeling his raw pain into his performances. His eyes carried the weight of real sorrow, and audiences who watched him sensed a new depth in his acting. It was as though he had crossed a threshold, from portraying emotions to living them. His loss had become part of his artistry, not in a way that glorified his pain, but in a way that honored the truth of the human condition. Friends who knew him privately saw the change too. He became quieter, more reflective, less concerned with trivial matters. Fame seemed even less important than before. What mattered now was time. Time with loved ones. Time spent meaningfully. Time given to those who truly mattered. The deaths of his mother and brother had stripped away illusions and revealed to him what was real. Love, connection, memory, and the fleeting nature of existence. In his solitude, Gökberk wrote often. He filled journals with letters to his mother, words he wished he could say to his brother, memories he wanted preserved so they would not fade. Writing became his refuge, a way to speak into the silence and to keep them close. Sometimes he would revisit old photographs and recordings, listening to their voices, until the ache in his chest grew unbearable. Other times, he would sit in complete stillness, closing his eyes, whispering prayers, believing that in the quiet he could still feel their presence. The pain never disappeared, but it changed form over time. It became less of a wound and more of a scar, a permanent mark that hurt when touched, but also reminded him of the love he had been blessed with. He began to live not just for himself, but for them too, carrying their memory in every decision, in every performance, in every step forward. The grief had taught him that life's meaning lies in love, and that love, once given, never truly dies. Years later, whenever he spoke of his mother or his brother in interviews, his voice carried a tremor, a softness that revealed the depth of his loss. He would smile gently when recalling them, the kind of smile that hides tears but radiates gratitude. For even though their absence left an unfillable gap, their love had shaped him into the man he was, and that was something death could not take away. For Gökberk demirci, the deaths of his mother and brother became the defining heartbreak of his life. It stripped him of illusions, it scarred him deeply, but it also gave him a new understanding of what it means to love, to grieve, and to live. He carried them forward not in sorrow alone, but in strength, in memory, and in every role where he poured his heart so fully that audiences felt not just a performance, but a soul reaching out through the screen.